Welcome to another episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Our State of the Division series continues today as we take a look at the AFC West. I'm joined by regular guests Joe and Byron. Welcome, guys. And we've got some AFC West representation joining us today, as we've got Dan from the Answer is 42, who's a big Denver Broncos fan, and you're going to be providing us some insight. So welcome to the show, Dan.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. It's always great to have some fans of the teams here as well, to give us that insight. You're obviously joining us today. Let the people know, the people who are watching our show, where can they find you and what sort of shows and content do you run?
Right down below me, that's my Twitter, @_theanswers42. You can find me on YouTube, @theanswers42 media. I also write for e5280sports.com, as well as do a show for them every Thursday where I cover nationally. I cover all the major headlines across the four major sports: baseball, basketball, football, and hockey. Don't do soccer. Sorry, guys. I don't. I would be an absolute ignoramus when it came to hockey. I just said hockey, but soccer. But so those are the two main places to find me. I also have a show here on Let's Talk Sports that I'm restarting on Tuesday. That's called Let's Get Some Answers. So as you can see, I'm just all about getting answers. You got questions, I bring answers.
Cool. Love the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. Big fan of that.
I'm glad you caught it.
Cool, good stuff. So we're going to break down, say, the AFC West. We're on. So right now we're live in a few places. So we're live on the Let's Talk Sports YouTube and Facebook page. That's a new one. So again, Dan Harris, thanks ever so much for setting that up. And we're live on the Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover Twitter page. Of course, go follow the pages. Go listen to the audio podcast on Spotify. Right, let's get into it then. AFC West, we're going to go through the four teams: the Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, and then as we've done in this series so far, we'll take a look at the futures markets, and we're going to take a look at the division, playoffs, and the win totals as well. See if we can get some early future commitments in from the guys here for what they're going to be back in for 2023. So, Dan, as we're going to start with the Denver Broncos, let's open it and hand it across to you. How are you feeling in terms of kind of how 22 went and where the Broncos are sat heading into 2023?
Well, obviously, things did not go as planned in Denver last season, to say the least. The good thing is, though, that how bad they were was able to get guys like Hackett and those out of the building, so that way they could bring in the adults that are going to be in the room, which are Sean Payton, Vance Joseph, etc. Those are going to be the biggest additions. The second biggest additions are going to be along the offensive line. Something we talked a little bit about before the show is the additions of the Ben Powers, of Mike McGlinchey, the return of the belly in Quinn Miners, and then the return of Garrett Bowles out there at left tackle with an actual position coach that knows what they're doing in Zach Strife, unlike the monkeys that were throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what stuck in Denver last year. So those two key additions, obviously multiples on each end, are going to prove a vast improvement on this team from last year to this year. I am still not willing to drink all of the Kool-Aid and say that this team is going to go off and win Super Bowls or anything of that nature, but they are definitely capable of a wild card, to say the least.
Well, it was an interesting year last year. A lot going on in Denver in 2022, for sure. All the circus that comes with Russell Wilson, which we'll get into, I'm sure. Broncos finished 5-12. They fired. I thought this was a bit harsh, and obviously they were going to fire him anyway. But they fired first-year head coach Nathaniel Hackett after a Week 16 Christmas Day loss. Merry Christmas, Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, I mean, when you give up a 50 burger to Baker Mayfield 3 days after he walks off the plane, it's kind of hard to justify keeping the guy around.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Yeah, I think it was been coming for a long time, so maybe put him out of his misery. But yeah.
Was it more of a kindness to let him get Secret Santa done?
Hey,
they could have fired him well
maybe
before.
That last minute shopping in, he had that extra time, and he still got paid, so the check was still coming in. So I don't think he had that terrible of a time.
Yeah, true. And he's landed on his feet, hasn't he? Going to the Jets, so he's going to be okay. The offense for Denver last year ranked 32 in scoring. Obviously, that was the big problem. The offense was just putrid, might be the best way to describe it. And the defense was solid as it has been for a long time in Denver. Probably ranked the 7th in total defense for the year. So really, really good defense. It just needed a little bit of help from its offense and that season could have been so much different. Big changes as you've talked about and touched on there, Dan. Sean Payton in as head coach, traded from the Saints. What did you make of what the Broncos had to give up then to go get Sean Payton in?
I could not believe it took that little. I think a lot of it had it, and Payton kind of alluded to this in his opening presser about how he essentially didn't want New Orleans to fleece his next team, so that way he's handicapped without any first-round picks for several years. So the fact that they only had to give up that one first and a couple twos, that to me was the easy price to pay for a Hall of Fame coach. People can try and consternate about how many firsts they gave up between Russ and Sean, but something people aren't talking about is all of that compensation is done outside of the 3rd rounder next year that they gave up for Sean Payton. All the compensation is done. They owe neither the Seahawks nor the Saints anything other than that 3rd rounder going to New Orleans next year. So as much as they gave up, they had so much capital to work with between the trades that I can't even remember his first name, but anyways, the other Payton, I can't believe I forgot the GM's first name, but anyways, the other Payton was able to make in like getting a first rounder for Bradley Chubb, who was borderline a bust while he was here, able to fleece the Dolphins out of a first rounder that was used to get Sean Payton, and a lot of other little moves that he made to get the capital together to get these two guys and put them together, I think has been absolutely brilliant and has not been talked about enough in the ilk that he really got a bargain with both these guys.
Cool, good stuff. And yeah, it's an interesting one with Payton. Byron, Joe, what do you think kind of the move to go get Sean Payton in and what it cost?
I'm not sure I could disagree more. Sean Payton was a good head coach. He was really good in New Orleans. In his last 10 years, he's won 4 playoff games against 2018 Cam Newton, against Mitch Trubisky, against Nick Foles, and against Nick Foles. I'm not sure I'd be happy giving up multiple picks when one of them's a first rounder for that, when I'm already low on capital and I already have a boondoggle at quarterback. If Russell Wilson turns it round and Sean Payton kicks him up the arse and is good, and if not, Jarrett Stidham is the one game he was good last year and Sean Payton get that out of him, then it's a great move. I don't have faith that Sean Payton is a great move. I think he's a good head coach. I don't think he's a franchise changer. He bailed on New Orleans when times got tough and he'd rinse the salary cap every year for 4 years and it finally came due when he was like, all right, later. Not a man I would want to trust my franchise with. Not when I have to pay draft picks and a boatload of money to him as well. Not that Denver is short on money.
Right. I mean, they do have the richest owner in American sports, and I think the 3rd richest owner in the world. So, yeah definitely.
Unfortunately, it doesn't buy draft picks, though.
I mean, yeah, but when you look at what George Payton has done, there you go, I got his name, has done in the later rounds, the Baron Brownings, the Josie Jules, etc., the fact that they didn't have first and second rounders wasn't that big a deal. I mean, yes, obviously you want those blue chip prospects, but when you're trying to fix the holes that were in this roster, those first round picks were not going to get you a top flight quarterback. I know what Russell Wilson did last year, but let's erase that year and look at the 10 years prior where he was the most winningest quarterback in a 10-year stretch in NFL history. He had the most touchdowns in a 10-year span in NFL history. Like, a lot of the things he did before last year are what Russell Wilson is. 2022 is not what Russell Wilson is. And something I mentioned again before the show, before y'all jumped on, was the fact that people are not giving enough credit to Russell Wilson toughing out some serious injuries. He had knee surgery after the season on a knee that's been bothering him for multiple years. He partially tore his labrum in his throwing shoulder. I would like a lot of people that want to say that injury doesn't matter, go out videotape yourself throwing a football with a completely intact labrum, I guarantee you that with a partially torn labrum, Russell Wilson will beat you in that throwing contest. So
I would hope
people
so.
need to really look at the full breadth of what happened with Russell Wilson, get away from the hype, and actually look at the reality of the situation. He was put in a terrible situation with a terrible head coach, a terrible play caller, a terrible offensive line that got hurt. They did not have the same starting 5 offensive line for consecutive weeks until weeks 14 and 15. They had a different combination of 5 dudes up front for almost 80% of the season. He had his Tim Patrick got hurt in training camp. KJ Hamler couldn't stay on the field. Cortland Sutton was a shell of himself. And then you had Jerry Jeudy finally come out of his shell in the second half of the season, especially after Nathaniel Hackett was sent packing after that 50-burger to the LA Rams on Christmas Day. I do not believe, and I cannot conscribe to the fact that 2022 is what Russell Wilson is and will be for the rest of his career. He is still in his early 30s. This is an era of football that guys are consistently playing the quarterback position into their early to mid 40s. So to say that Russell Wilson is cooked at this point, I just cannot believe that.
Who are these quarterbacks who are playing into the early mid 40s?
Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady.
How old Aaron Rodgers?
Drew Brees. I mean,
I'm not sure Aaron Rodgers is in his 40s, and I'm pretty sure Drew Brees retired before his 40s. So he's not in his 40s. So Tom Brady's
early to mid 40s. Yeah, but he's going to play
39 isn't in your 40s.
Drew Brees played it until he was 43. We all know what Tom Brady did. And
we all know what Tom Brady did, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
there's
other lesser players that did it too. Josh McCown, etc.
So, Joe, just to throw over to you, Joe. So you've seen a lot. So, Joe, as a 49ers fan, you've seen a lot of Russell Wilson over the years. Do you think Russ can come back and to Dan's point that 2022 was an anomaly, or is that the start of the slide of Russell Wilson?
Yeah, it's like I think what Dan's brought around. This is the main question for the Broncos this year. Can Peyton make him better? And it's just deciding how much better is he going to get. Is he going to get back to when Russell Wilson was at his peak, or is he just going to bring him back to 10th to the 15th best quarterback in the league? Because obviously last year he was way down. So I think that's the big question. I'm not sure if he'll get back to the peak, because I think even in the last few years of the Seahawks, he wasn't as good as it has been. But if he can get back to an average quarterback or just above average quarterback, then the Broncos have got a chance to, like what Dan's mentioned, get to the wild card playoffs. And I think the good thing about getting paid in, it feels like Russell Wilson's got no excuses this year. I think if you brought in a new young head coach or someone who wasn't highly regarded, and they didn't fix the offensive line, and now they've got all these weapons, and it feels like he hasn't really got an excuse. So if he has another bad season or not the greatest season, then it might be time for it might be easy for the Broncos to be like, okay, let's move on, let's get somewhere else, instead of being here next year and again being like, can the next person get Russell Wilson back to where it goes? So I think it was a good hire in that sense. I think you mentioned about getting like some adults in the back room, so to cut out some of the stuff what we heard about what Russell Wilson was doing and having his own office and all that kind of thing. It was a bit like, now you've got to prove now, Russell, that you've got all this money. We gave up all this for you. This is the year to prove it. And I think if it does go wrong, it's see you later. Let's get someone else in and let's start again. Especially with, I don't think Peyton will put with having years of mediocrity.
Yeah, and I think from the point is Sean Payton let us know in that kind of initial press conference, he's not going to put up with Russell Wilson's shit and his gate, and all this stuff about having his own trainers in the building. All that's gone, and maybe that was Nathaniel Hackett's downfall, was giving Russell Wilson too long of a leash, maybe respecting him a bit too much as a kind of first-time head coach with the veteran quarterback, maybe just, giving him too long of a leash. And maybe, there were other reasons. I think Nathaniel Hackett still thinks he can use some of the timeouts that he saved in those Broncos games in future jobs. But, I think getting a grip of Russell, and as I think it's a good point, Joe, what you've made there. You don't need to be getting back to prime Russell Wilson to make a big difference here. If you can just get some solid quarterback play out of him, that Denver defense, I think, will do a good enough job. Kept them in so many games last year, so many low-scoring games. you made money for fun on Denver Broncos unders last year in terms of point totals. That defense, I still think it's as good as it was. So, yeah, you don't need too big of an upturn in the offense. Dan, I know you've not too long with us, but just before you do go, what do you make of the moves that they've made from a free agency and a draft perspective in particular? Because we've not touched on that too much.
Yeah. As far as the draft, I see you got the moves there. I absolutely love the draft for what they had. I mean, you get Marvin Mims, who's probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest wide receiver that has probably the best hands to go with that speed in the draft in Marvin Mims. I mean, you just go and look at his highlight reel. It's stupid, some of the catches that he makes. Like one-handed over top the guy, dangling with feet up in the air. Like it's insane the acrobatic catches he makes. You got Drew Sanders, athletic linebacker out of Arkansas. I like him. I think he's going to be the replacement for Josey Jewell this coming season if he comes in and does what we all think that he could do. Then you have Riley Moss. I know a lot of people like to do the low-hanging fruit with Jason Sehorn, and Sean Payton had him in New York and all that, but I really like that kid. I love his physicality. I think that's what really stood out on tape, and then you add 4.4 speed on top of that. I think he's going to do really well. He's going to be another one of those just absolute hits in the third or fourth round that George Payton has kind of become famous for. JL Skinner, I think, is going to be a really good special teams type maven. And then Alex Forsythe was probably the third best center in the draft and fell all the way to the 7th round for some reason. So I think they got a couple of steals in there. Alex might actually push for a starting gig this year with how bad Lloyd Cushenberry's been. Really, the only person he's got to push out of his way is Luke Wattenberg, who was another either 6th or 7th round pick from the year before. As far as the free agent additions, Samaje Perine, I like him as a good fail-safe in case Javonte Williams isn't ready for the beginning of the season, and then a real good 1-2 punch with him. I think getting punched in the mouth by those two physical runners on a consistent basis once they're both up and running is going to be an absolute terror for defense. It's going to wear them down, and you're going to see a lot of games won in the fourth quarter from this running game and that defense. And I mentioned before, Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers, this is something I've been screaming about for the last, I can't even remember how long. It's got to have at least been half a decade. I've been sitting here screaming at the Broncos to fix that offensive line that they just kind of put together as a patchwork. When Peyton Manning was here, it didn't really matter. He was going to get the ball out so quick. You could have just a bunch of guys. But when you have guys like Russell Wilson and the plethora of quarterbacks before him, guys that tend to hold on to the ball longer, you need big bodies up front that are going to be able to hold the fort down. And that's what they did with Ben Powers, who gave up no sacks last year. Mike McGlinchey, who's an absolute road grader at the right tackle position. So those were the biggest additions and will make the biggest impact for the Broncos going forward. I loved Zach Allen as a physical presence on the line. I know they let Draymond Jones go. As much as I loved what Draymond Jones brought in the pass rush, he lacked a lot when it came to run defense. I think Zach Allen's that nice medium. He's not going to give as much pass rush as a Draymond Jones, but he's going to give a whole lot more in stopping the run, which is the real Achilles heel of this Broncos defense last year. As good as they were everywhere else, they were absolutely abysmal against the run, especially if you go back and watch the Raiders games where they swept them and Josh Jacobs was just running roughshod over everybody. That was a big hole that needed to be filled. And Zach Allen's going to go a long way towards that, as well as the recent signing of Frank Clark. He's essentially the Jimmy Butler of the NFL. You're not going to see the best of him until the playoffs start. But if that's the case, I'll take it. If we're seeing the best of Frank Clark, that means that everything else went well, and the Broncos are sitting in the postseason. So I'm all for all the moves that they made. I think they're all going to be monumental to getting this team over the hump. And one thing that I don't think enough people have talked about is the emphasis on the third phase. The fact that the Broncos have brought in 3 special teams coaches, and almost every single one of these draft choices and half of their free agents have some sort of job on special teams, whether it's a returner, a protector, whatever the case, a gunner, whatever the case may be. They have brought in a whole lot of speed and size that they're going to be throwing on the special teams, which has been a real Achilles heel of this team for a very long time. Essentially since 2015, the third phase has been non-existent for Denver. So it's nice to see them put some emphasis on that phase of the game.
Cool, good stuff. And I think, a lot of moves we talked about, the draft capital they had to give up. I really like the Frank Clark move. I just think he's obviously, over the years we've seen just how good he is. He's coming from that Chiefs team that have just won a championship. You'd be interested if he can become a factor for the Broncos, because you kind of do need things to be going well to reap the benefits of Frank Clark. But yeah, all round, I think a fairly decent offseason for the Broncos. Byron, Joe, just quick touch on the moves from the Broncos before we look at the floor and the ceiling.
I like the O-line moves. I think it's needed. Russell Wilson, I think, gave up the most sacks in the NFL last year. I think tied maybe with Justin Fields, or around there with Justin Fields, certainly, which I kind of expect from Justin Fields. Is a young quarterback who is struggling with a terrible O-line. Russell Wilson is an experienced veteran who should know better and release the ball a little quicker. The O-line should help, though. I think with what they had in the draft, the moves were good. I like Marvin Mims a lot. I think he's one of those, he could be a fantasy sneaky player. They do have a bit of an issue, I think, with, you can never have too many receivers, but it feels like they almost have too many receivers. I like Greg Dulcich, the tight end. Albert O was an interesting prospect coming into last year. But then, he's Dan Sager, Cortland Sutton, Judy, Tim Patrick, Marvin Mims have signed. It's a lot. And, I was kind of expecting one of them to get traded earlier in the offseason. It hasn't happened yet, obviously. Marvin, what's the guy? KJ Hamler as well. And he brought in Marcus Callaway from New Orleans. And again, Marcus Callaway is not a wide receiver 2 or 3, but it's just more and more bodies, which is a good thing. You can never have too many. I think overall it's a pretty good offseason. I'm not sure. I certainly don't share Dan's optimism of it's going to be I don't think they're making the playoffs this year, regardless. I think there's so much ground to be made up. Even if Sean Payton is a hit, I struggle to see them winning. Truthfully, I struggle to see them having a positive record. I have them with pretty much the same record as last year. I think they've got a tougher schedule than last year. So I'm not saying they're a worse team than last year. I just think it's going to be a struggle to make up that ground. And obviously, I don't believe in Russell Wilson. I think he struggled his last year in Seattle. There was issues around him last year, and he was hurt last year, but he's also aging, and aging quarterbacks don't mend any better. I think he'll be improved, but I don't think he's going to be pushing top 12 quarterbacks in the league this year. So I have Broncos. I always do, as I say on these shows every week, a playoff predictor of every game I predict in the season. And, a couple of wins here and there obviously change the outlook of the season, but I have them at 5-12 again. I think that is probably their flaw. I struggle to predict them winning 3 games or fewer. I think their ceiling is probably sneaking to 9 or 10 wins, maybe sneaking a wildcard place. I don't think they will, but I think that's their ceiling for me.
Dan, just before we'll ask you about the floors and ceiling, we've got the guys from Bottom Line Sports watching us, and they're blaming everything on Coach Nathaniel Hackett from 2022. Thank you very much for joining us and watching, guys. Just Nathaniel Hackett getting all of the blame there from the guys at the Bottom Line Sports. So, Dan, give us then the floor and the ceiling then for the 2023 Denver Broncos.
The floor, if just all the wheels fall off and the car falls apart on their ride to Dove Valley there. Probably what Byron there said. The floor is 2022, 4 to 5 wins. The ceiling, again, I'm not drinking all the Kool-Aid. I'm not seeing Super Bowl, but I definitely believe they can get in the 10 to 11 win range and sneak their way in as a wild card and maybe even make some noise with that defense and running game.
Yeah, it's so stacked, isn't it? The AFC. So
yes.
It's difficult. I think you are going to need double-digit wins because I don't think they're going to win the division. So I think for a wild card spot, they're going to need double-digit wins. Joe, finish us off then on the Denver Broncos, floor and ceiling for us.
Yeah, I'm similar to most people. Floor, like I said, 3 to 5 wins with Jarrett Stidham coming in before Christmas. I think that's like the floor, and giving up on the Russell Wilson experience and blowing it all up. And then probably the ceiling, I'm probably 8 or 9. I think, like you said, just with how strong the AFC is, and they have to play like the AFC East as well, which I think everyone's predicted them 4 teams to be in playoff contention. So I think it's going to be tricky to get that. I think they could sneak in maybe 9 or 10, similar to like how teams did last year. But I can't see any more wins than that. I think it's the games before the bye, if they can at least come out with that 4-4, and then they've got a chance. But I think if you start losing early on, then it might just be like a snowball effect, and similar to last year.
I do love their. Sorry.
No,
I do love their first two because they have two home games, I believe, to start the season. Vegas, who I think are going to be appalling. Spoiler alert for the Vegas preview, and Washington at home. And I think Sean Payton is someone who he wants his guys to believe in him. Obviously, it's Sean Payton, but I think if he comes out that 2-0, 2 comprehensive victories, the season could have a very different turn to it because those are 2 very winnable games. Like I said, I have them winning 5, and those are 2 of them. So there's a real chance that they could win those 2 and then galvanize themselves, to be a better team than I think they are. I think I buy into a lot of the schedule narrative type stuff, and I think having a real strong start with a new head coach who wants a nice bright start. I mean, who doesn't? But I think it's really important for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson to have a bright start. So if they can start that 2-0 with comprehensive victories, I think there's a real good groundwork.
Yeah, and especially they've got Kansas twice before the bye in week 9. So again, if they can make it 4-4, maybe 5-3, and you've already got Kansas out the way, then that's that can go a long way to having a good season.
One last Denver nugget before we. Yeah, I'm taking the under on that as a spoiler again for our preview later. Denver have the second active streak without making a playoff appearance, which seems crazy because their last playoff game was, I'm sure Dan can tell me,
2015 Super Bowl 50.
Super Bowl win, yeah. And then they haven't made the Super Bowl. They haven't made the playoffs since. So,
nope.
As much as I'm shit talking the Broncos, I don't dislike the Broncos. I'd quite like to see them back in there. I love, Mile High as a stadium. I love, the Broncos aesthetics and the uniforms. And like I said, I don't really much care for Sean Payton. I don't much care for Russell Wilson either. But I do like the Broncos. I always like the fan base. They're always a real loud, boisterous bunch. So I'd like to see that playoff streak end soon. I don't think it will be this year, but I wouldn't mind it happening.
You are so happy that the Cowboys didn't end up with Sean Payton, aren't you, Byron?
I'm real glad I didn't pay a first round draft pick to get him, certainly. But yeah, I wouldn't want him in Dallas.
So the guys from the Bottom Line Sports, we'll talk about that later. So stick around, guys, if you're watching. I think you are watching. Stick around later because we're going to go through the futures markets for the AFC West, which will include the win totals. So we won't spoil anything. Oh, I think you just have. But take the over, just barely interesting. And we've got some positive Cowboys affirmation from the Bottom Line Sports guys as well. We should definitely talk. Absolutely. So, Dan, obviously new to good teams and great teams cover. What we've been doing during the State of the Division series is our own little prop bet. So we'll talk around the actual markets. And so the prop bet I've got for the Denver Broncos, you'll have to pick a week number for it, though, because I couldn't quite find the line. But which week of the 2023 season is Russell Wilson's wife, Ciara, getting on to Russell about leaving Denver? Which week of the season do you think it's going to be before she starts chirping in Russell's ear that she wants out of Colorado?
I mean, never. I don't see why. Why would she want out of Denver when she spent all that time in Seattle? You cannot tell me that Seattle is a better city than Denver. I know there's there might be more allure in an LA or a New York, but I don't think this is a situation like Carmelo and Lala. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. Ciara, she's international. It doesn't matter where she is. She's going to be famous. The reason Melo left because of Lala is because she was a radio personality and she needed to go to New York to get into a bigger market. This isn't the same situation. So I really don't see Ciara ever doing something like that, because if she was going to, she would have forced him to not come to Denver. She would have forced him to go to, say, New York with the Jets or something like that. There never would have been a pit stop here in Denver if that was going to be the case. So to me, I'm not taking that bet in either way unless we're taking the under for never.
Under for never.
Oh, was that the over?
Or over,
the over. However that would work. I don't know. We're
so I would think it would be the week 4.5 would be the over-under line, because you've got at Chicago, one of the greatest cities in America, and it's not yet winter. And then week 5 is hosting New York. And imagine Aaron Rodgers is 4-0 and comes in and goes 5-0. Russell, this could be you. You just need to get out of Denver.
Do you really think that's going to happen?
Well, I'm just setting the line at 4.5.
4-0, 5-0. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think the Jets will be 5-0. But I think the Jets will beat the Broncos, and then Ciara, who I don't know anything about other than she's famous, so I can't really make a song pun here. I would love to. But yeah, I think maybe that's the time where Russell, We've just been to Chicago. It was beautiful. There was no snow on the ground. It wasn't minus 38 degrees. And then Aaron Rodgers is 5-0, and he's beloved in New York. He's on Times Square. That could be you. And you could go and reunite with Nathaniel in New York or New Jersey.
We are New Jersey. Joe, which week, I've got your pun for you, Byron, here. Which week do you think Ciara's going to be asking Russell to make his 1-2 step out of Denver?
There you go. That's Paul finish for the podcast.
No idea.
Who knows? It's a tricky question there, Paul. It might have been week 1 last year. You never know.
Yeah,
how do we know it's not actually happened? You know? Yeah.
I'm sure Denver is lovely to sit. This isn't a trash on Denver as a city. This is more on Ciara as a pop star and clearly the person who wears the trousers in that relationship. Dan, we'll let you go. Thanks ever so much for joining us on Good Teams and Great Teams cover. I know you've got to get off and do some other stuff, but we appreciate you. Go and give Dan a follow at @_. The answer is 42, and go catch Dan on his content. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have you back sometime soon, Dan.
Nice to meet you, Dan.
It's been an absolute
Nice to meet you
pleasure.
too. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Nice one, Dan. Bye. So, Broncos covered. Let's move on to the champs. So sadly, we were going to have Tanner, who was going to come and represent the Chiefs, but he wasn't able to make it. So what state do we think kind of the current champs are in? Pretty good one, obviously, but kind of where they're at so far heading into 2023, guys.
Where's your PowerPoint?
It's coming. Chill out.
Oh, all right. I'll just make sure you haven't forgot it. I can't work without a PowerPoint. I think the Chiefs are in good nick. Obviously, what have they done this offseason? Let's have a look.
So let's give the rundown of the Chiefs. They went 14-3 in 2022, won Super Bowl 57 in that epic game against the Eagles. Definitely one of the best Super Bowls. I think we're all in agreement with that. Best Super Bowls that we've seen. 7th straight AFC West title and hosted a 5th straight AFC Championship game. And Mahomes was league and Super Bowl MVP. Key things that have happened, I suppose, over the offseason. They let Orlando Brown leave for free agency and replaced him with Juwan Taylor from the Jaguars. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. Offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy leaves for the Commanders. So Eric Bieniemy just for some reason can't get a head coaching job. He's having to go elsewhere and maybe prove himself again at a terrible team, and maybe that will get him his head coaching job. They're currently preseason Super Bowl 58 favourites at +600 or 6-1 in UK money. Moves in the offseason there. I suppose the Juwan Taylor one was the big one. And there's the draft on screen, and we'll talk through as we go through. But yeah, Byron, Joe, where are we at with the Chiefs for 2023?
I think, as always, they play the favourites to win the division. I'll be shocked if they don't win it. It feels like every year there's a number of things people try and say. Well, they're not good at this position. They're lacking here. They're lacking there. And then they end up in the AFC Championship because they've just got the best quarterback in the league. And so I just if they don't win it, I'll be shocked. I think it's strange how it's moved from last year, because I feel like last year there was all 4 teams. People were expecting them to make the playoffs, and it was going to be the strongest division in NFL, and it turned out to just be the Chiefs the top again, Chargers close by, and then some dumpster fires with the other 2 teams. And I think that's how we're coming into this year. I'm not confident the Raiders or the Broncos are going to challenge them. I think the Chargers are going to charge. So I think it's going to be a comfortable road to the playoffs. And I'll be shocked if the AFC Championship hosting another game.
Yeah, to your point, I think, Joe, the Bottom Line Sports guys just shouted out there again. Yeah, many said sort of with the loss of Tyreek Hill that they might not win the division. There were some ludicrous shouts from some, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but some NFL analysts and pundits that they might not even make the playoffs because of how good the AFC West was. Ludicrous takes. You wouldn't get any such take here at Good Teams and Great Teams cover. Byron, kind of, is there a weak? Let's talk for that. Where's the weakness in this Kansas City Chiefs team? And how are you going to stop them?
I mean, if I knew how to stop the Chiefs, I'd probably be working for an NFL team at this point. I don't think there is a real obvious weakness. Does Travis Kelce suddenly hit an age wall? It's things that are hypotheticals. I don't think there's a real weakness. I don't think there's a real do this and you slow down the Chiefs. Like, get internal pressure on Patrick Mahomes. But after the Bucs Super Bowl, they've done a real good job of keeping that O-line steady and solid, as well as Juwan Taylor, like you say on this screen here. We've got Donovan Smith came in as well as a later free agent ad. And I think he's going to be more depth because it was a bit suspect in Tampa Bay's last year or so. But he's a good, reliable body for the most part, and he's not expected to be starting. So I think they've just done such a good job. Andy Reid's such a good coach. Is there some kind of drop-off with Eric Bieniemy leaving? I don't think so, but it's all hypotheticals. Like, there's not a real area of weakness you can point at and say, okay, the Chiefs are going to struggle here. The running backs aren't exactly sexy names, but Jerick McKinnon caught a ton of touchdown passes last year and was a real weapon. Isaiah Pacheco is a grinding running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has obviously been a bust as a first-round pick, but he's not the worst running back in the league. He's okay as a rotational piece. There's not... I mean, that's why they've won 7 division titles in a row. Like you say, they've hosted the AFC title game 5 years in a row. There isn't a weakness. There's a really strong team. I think, like I say, it's all hypotheticals that might fall off on. Obviously, as I always do, I had a little look at the schedule. I think it's real balanced. Don't have any real tough road fixtures all in a row. Week 18, I really like is Chiefs at Chargers to finish the division. The Chiefs may well have the division wrapped up by then. I feel like I overrate the Chargers every year, as most of the NFL heads do. But
yeah,
that could be a contentious game. And I think just before the bye, they go to Germany to play the Dolphins. They have the bye, then they play the Eagles, who are also coming off a bye. I think that's going to be a real, are they going to be a number 1 seed? I can't project them to not make the playoffs. So I think it's like their regular season is, are they the number 1 seed or not? Week 14, they play the Bills coming off a bye as well, which is obviously going to be a big stretch of games between weeks 9 and 14. But
they've also got the Bengals week 17. So they've got the last 2 games, Bengals and Chargers and Bills just before the start. The schedule makers have definitely made it interesting by the end to see who's going to get that number 1 seed. I would say the only position, it's one of them weird things where I would say is not the greatest. It's probably the wide receiver room.
Yeah.
But then you've got Patrick Mahomes, which counteracts that, and because probably the best wide receiver is Kadarius Toney, but can he play 17 games? He's been injured quite a lot for New York, and he was a bit in and out. And then if you lose him, I know you've still got Travis Kelce, so I think he's definitely the Jenga piece. If you lose Travis, and then it's like, who do you go to next? But then again, we say this every year, and someone scores a number of touchdowns, and
I think that's probably for me the piece. But the combination of the wide receivers and the enemy going, I think that could unravel. And I'm saying, I doubt it will, because I'm sure Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes between them will sort that out. But that's maybe where it could unravel a little bit for them. You look at the depth chart for the Chiefs right now. You've got Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Marquez, MVS, yeah.
Rashee Rice was a second rounder who I don't really like.
Richie.
I have a sneaky little. Justin Ross was an undrafted free agent last year, and he balled at Clemson, and then he had a foot injury. He was on the IR all year last year. And, it's OTAs, it's practice squad highlights, but he kind of he looked great in college. And I was kind of surprised he wasn't undrafted free agent. He had a brutal injury in his final year, which obviously led to him being an undrafted free agent and, might never have played the game. I mean, he's yet to play in the NFL. But I think he's like a sneaky name to watch out for because he's, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, a gadget guy. MVS is a speed guy. Justin Ross, I think, is the most prototype build a wide receiver 1. It's a lot. He's an undrafted free agent from a year ago. It's asking a lot, obviously, for him to be Patrick Mahomes' number 1 wide receiver. But I think there is potential there for something to pop. If I had to pick somebody that's, because I don't, obviously the wide receiver room, if that was, 28 other teams, you'd be like, they've got the worst wide receiver room in the NFL. Yeah. It just doesn't matter because they have Kelce and Mahomes. But I think Justin Ross is a name that could pop this year, who maybe is going under the radar, certainly.
And just a point to move on to, because we talked about Frank Clark going to the Broncos. The guys, again, from Bottom Line Sports, defensive line's the weakness. Chris Jones can't do it all. Again, what do we think? Because, I mean, so Frank Clark's gone, but then they used their first-round pick on Felix Anudike-Uzomah from Kansas State, who I love. Yep. What do we think that? Do we think that in itself is enough, or is there more that Kansas, again, given the way the AFC is, are Kansas going to be found lacking in being able to get to the quarterback?
mean, Frank Clark, I think he had more of a down year last year than in years prior. I mean, obviously he comes big in the playoffs, but George Karlaftis had a reasonable rookie year, so that's a name to could develop into year 2. Again, I think it's, you've got to find little needles and haystacks for Kansas City weaknesses. That's probably one of their weaker position groups, but Chris Jones is one of the greatest defensive tackles in the league. So, if he has to carry it a little bit, then you kind of expect him to. You're on mute, Joe.
Joe, come on. How many episodes have we done?
Guys. So they also got Charles Omenihu as well. So another and he was really good for the 49ers as like a depth kind of guy. And it feels like Chiefs always will be week 10. Everyone will be saying the defense is looking terrible. They would have let loads of points and loads of yards, and then come late on our playoffs time, Steve Spagnuolo will have them all sorted out, and they're shutting down all the other major quarterbacks. So see how that goes.
Interesting. And another chip into bottom line sports, guys. I think you should just come on, guys, at this point. I think the young guys will be better by year's end. They'll struggle maybe for like the first 8 to 10 games. Interesting take. Reach out. Let's get you on sometime soon, guys, from the bottom line sports. I'll love the Steve Austin link in that as well, if that's what you've gone for. Stone Cold Steve Austin tag.
Well, that's what Paul Redmond said so.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we do floor and ceiling, would you like to hear the prop bet I've got? You can say no at any point because these are bad.
No, I always want to hear these. It's the best part of the show.
Don't know, waste your 5 minutes of preparation, Paul.
I know, yeah. Just scribble down on the pad at like 10 to 8 today. So
I hope this one's not about Jackson Mahomes, because that could be.
No, yeah.
How many years does Jackson Mahomes get banged up for?
I feel like I think we're maybe 22 episodes in, Byron, 23 episodes in. I think I found the line of what. I don't think we've had any cancelable moments yet, have we?
You must have done some good editing. Thank you. Live streams are going to kill me.
Especially during the covers draft.
The wrestling draft.
And the wrestling draft, yeah. All right. This is more for Coach Andy Reid. How many total cheeseburgers will Coach Andy Reid consume in the off-season? Over or under 249 and a half?
How many weeks is the off-season? It's like 89 days now.
About 6 months, yeah.
So 26 weeks, 8 a week. It's a good line. I'm going to go under slightly. But, I mean, if he goes to White Castle though, and gets sliders and counts them as one each and gets a 6-pack, I will take the under, but I think it's a good line.
Is White Castle big in Missouri?
It's big in America. I presume it's big in Missouri. I think it's big in Missouri. That's junk food.
Right, yo. Floors and ceiling. Joe, kick us off. Floor for the Chiefs. I think I know what the ceiling is, but
yeah, I was about to say floor 11 wins. And I don't think that will happen, but I think if worse comes to worse, like 11 wins, and they're like the 3rd seed in AFC. That's probably the 3rd or 4th. That's the floor. And then, yeah, the ceiling probably, 15 to 17 wins, I don't think they're going beaten. I think 15 to 16, but yeah, that's the floor and ceiling for me.
Yeah, I think for me, ceiling Super Bowl again to win it back to back.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And the floor, maybe 11, 12 wins, still win the division, not be the number 1 seed. I think that's as bad as it will get. I'd love to have a team that's as bad as it gets. Byron, for you, floor and ceiling for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I can't disagree. They have a tough schedule. I have them going 15-2, despite it being a very tough schedule. Floor is 10 wins. And again, I don't see that really happening. I think the realistic floor is maybe 12 wins. And still probably winning the division, maybe finishing second if the Chargers are really good. The ceiling is obviously the Super Bowl. And 16 wins. Again, I find it hard to predict them going unbeaten with that schedule. It's real tough. But 15, 16 wins and the Super Bowl is the ceiling and very realistic.
I am looking forward to week 1. I think that's a good schedule.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Chiefs and Lions. Yeah.
It got a bit of because people want the Bills game, want the Bengals. It's like,
it's way too early for that. Yeah.
After 9 months or whatever ends up being without football, 7 months. I want anything. I love the Lions end of last season. Chiefs at home, great matchup. Yeah, I fully agree.
Because I think the Lions are probably the most interesting team in the NFC, so it's interesting to get them straight up against the Super Bowl champions. So I think they've scheduled it well.
It's a big test currently. So what are we, 3 months out? Chiefs are currently -7, over-unders 54 for the kickoff game. The Chiefs, what do we think? Could the Lions cover that?
I think 7. So. I think what the Lions kind of do well is what the Chiefs don't want, which really is that Detroit offensive line is really good, and they will run the piss out the ball. Devon Achane hasn't been... Devon Achane, that's Dolphins running back. Jahmyr Gibbs hasn't been seen in the NFL. Obviously, he looked great in training camp. He's a speedy running back. Of course, he looks good in training camp. There's no pads on. But he does look good, and he's going to match up on linebackers. And it's an area of weakness for Kansas City, that, D-line, linebacker coverage. I think the Chiefs will win, but yeah, I wouldn't be stunned if the Lions won the game. I certainly wouldn't be stunned if they covered. 7 points is a lot.
When was kind of the last opening? I know we're digressing, but there's, I suppose, not too much else to talk about with the Chiefs. When was the last opening game upset we had? Because it's how many years have we had it? It's been the Super Bowl champion, maybe 10. It's been. When was that? Did the Chiefs beat the Patriots one night on opening night?
Yeah, it was Kareem Hunt's breakout game, right? As a rookie.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, I think that is the last one I can recall, certainly off the top of my head. You didn't let me prepare for this, but...
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to come up. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I think that is the last one, though. And it kind of familiar when the Chiefs were defending in 2020, or 2021, when Clyde Edwards-Helaire had like 10 goal line attempts and didn't get any of them. And it was like, oh, this is going to be his Kareem Hunt breakout game. And it just... I think that was really Clyde Edwards-Helaire's height as an NFL player, was having all those goal line opportunities week 1 of his debut season, and since then it's just kind of got worse by the week.
Yeah, it's a chance. I think especially with Pacheco now, who was amazing down the stretch. The bottom line, sports guys are going to learn a valuable lesson here when getting involved with good teams and great teams cover. If you throw out a bet or a take, it's going to get noted, and we will hold you to that record. Those guys are going to take the over on the Andy Reid cheeseburgers. It's going to be pretty difficult to verify that one, but whatever I say goes. Just a gut feel on Andy Reid, how he's looking on the sideline week 1, and I'll make that call. And they're going for the Lions to cover that 7. I suspect it might go more. I feel like I'd probably buy the extra half point. 7.5, I think, maybe. I don't know. But I think, the Lions could potentially keep that one close. Right. Shall we move on? We're on to... Let's go to Vegas. Everybody loves a trip to Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. Let's take a look at the Raiders. Raiders went 6-11 in 2022. I'm pretty sure I've got this stat verified. They were the first team to lose 5 games in a season after holding 10-point plus second half leads, to lose 5 games. Oh, and we've timed this perfectly. Omar, our Las Vegas Raiders supporter, has just joined us. So, Omar, I will introduce you. You couldn't have timed this any better. Thank you so much for joining us.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad that I came at just the perfect time.
Couldn't have timed it any better. So, Omar, welcome to Good Teams with Great Teams Cover. We are halfway through breaking down the AFC West in our State of the Division series. We'll get your take on the Raiders straight away then, if that's okay. But first of all, where can our listeners and viewers find you, and what content is it that you produce?
Yeah, sure. Thanks again for having me on. Can you hear me well?
All good. Yeah, sounds all good.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, my name's Omar Fonseca. I'm from Ball and Bud Sports. It's a bunch of just sports fans and analysts who come on. I had a podcast, and now you can find us on YouTube, is where we do most of our stuff, at Ball and Buds, BALLANDBUDS. And again, we cover every sports. I got insiders from MMA and boxing to baseball and football. So.
Cool, good stuff. Welcome to the show. And the guys, I'm guessing you may know, at the Bottom Line Sports, who are currently watching along.
Good stuff. Very pleased to see you anyway, if not.
Well, because the Bottom Line is tonight, and I will be on there tonight, so you can catch us on the Bottom Line, part of the Sideline Sports Network with you all now.
Good stuff, which is a great, and I cannot remember if I shouted that at the start of the show, but an opportunity to do so. Yeah, the guys from Let's Talk Sports and Sideline Sports. which good teams and great teams cover is a part of, all coming together now, which is creating these opportunities, which is cool. So we were just talking through the Raiders are starting to, Omar, so which covered off that they lost 5 games holding 10-plus point second half leads. Highlight possibly of the season was the walk-off lateral fumble recovery touchdown against the Patriots in Week 15. I'm sure we'll never forget. But they were also on the end of 9 one-score losses in 2022, so a lot of close games that they were on the wrong side of. Headlines: traded for Derek Carr. Derek Carr away to the New Orleans Saints, replaced Carr with Jimmy G, who is already clearly having a great time in Las Vegas, and they put the franchise tag on Josh Jacobs. Give us your feeling, Omar, then kind of where the Raiders are heading into 2023.
Well, gentlemen, it is not going to be a pretty season for the Raiders, especially in a loaded division like the AFC West, where obviously you have the perennial Chiefs, right? The up-and-coming Chargers, and now Sean Payton, Russell Wilson mix. The over-under in Vegas, I believe last time I checked, was 7.5. I'm actually taking the under at 7, and I could see them actually not winning more than 5. They've got a really, really tough schedule. First of all, they play away from home 3 out of the first 4 weeks. They don't get a bye until week 13. And then they end off with all three division games in that last 4-game stretch. The team has not improved at all, really. They got some young players in the draft that hopefully can step up. But to be completely honest, you're bringing back a pretty similar team. I didn't see much improvement in any free agent signings. Again, the draftees, maybe. You got rid of Derek Carr, as you mentioned. That could be, even as some see it, a downgrade. I don't. I see it more as a lateral move just because Jimmy G at least has a winning record. But that being said, he's never had the team that Derek Carr had. And what I mean by that is a lack of a team and a lack of a defense. If we don't get another miraculous Ja'Cory Myers, fumble that I'm still not convinced. And let me preface this by saying I'm joking. I'm still not convinced that he wasn't throwing that game, that someone didn't pay him off in Vegas. Maybe he owed some gambling debts. But anyways, it's going to be a rough season, fellas. It's going to be a rough season. We don't even know if Josh Jacobs is going to sign the franchise tag. Eventually, Davante Adams is going to get traded because why was he here other than Derek Carr? Jimmy G, let's hope he can stay healthy. The defense still sucks. That's my feeling right now, gentlemen.
Yeah, and particularly not an optimistic outlook for the Vegas Raiders in 2023. Sorry, the bottom line sports guys. Shouting out Tyree Wilson for Texas Tech as a good pick, and one at 7, which I think was for Wilson to be there. I think was good value. He's got the potential foot issues, hasn't he? But I think one that can provide some production for the Raiders. Joe, Byron, for over to you. What kind of are you seeing from the Raiders heading into the season?
Love to hear what Omar said. I felt a bit awkward earlier because obviously Dan was real high on the Broncos, and I was like, "Nah, the Broncos suck." And I don't like really being combative with people and harshly disagreeing, but basically everything Omar said, I ever wrote down as like the Raiders are garbage, and it's nice to see a fan who agrees because it makes it less awkward for me. The Britishness, I guess, of like your team stinks. I'm sorry. I have them going 4-13. Little preview, I guess, on the over/under and win total betting, etc. The Raiders are 1,200 to win the division. They are also 1,200 to have the worst record in the NFL, and I know which one I would rather be betting on. They ain't winning the division. I think there's a real good chance they start out 0-6, 0-8, and for all the talent that isn't there, etc. I love the first 3 draft picks. I think they're all pretty good values. Wilson, I love Michael Mayer. I wish he'd went to Dallas. Byron Young, I think, is a good, solid player. Mm-hmm. But it's not enough. Jimmy G isn't medically cleared yet. Never mind, stay healthy. Jimmy G has to get healthy. They might be starting Brian Hoyer to start the year. They might sign Carson Wentz to start the year. Aiden O'Connell might take snaps this year. What happened in Vegas, I hope stays in Vegas and doesn't spread because it's rough. It's going to be a tough year. And the biggest worry I have with them starting, they start at Denver, at Buffalo, home Pittsburgh, at Chargers, Packers, and then Patriots at home. Josh McDaniels is toxic. Josh McDaniels gutted Denver. He had a garbage year last year, and the team clearly don't like him. Darren Waller didn't invite him to the wedding, and it was an off-season thing. Derek Carr couldn't wait to get out of there, and Derek Carr absolutely adores Oakland and Las Vegas. There was reports that Josh McDaniels would have got fired in the offseason if they could afford to pay him off. I think he's getting fired at the end of the season, and like I said, I think there's a good bet at 12-1 for them to have the worst record in football.
Yeah. So that was going to be my next question, Omar. Just fire over to you. How long has Josh McDaniels got here?
Oh, I mean, if he has another season like last year, or as we're talking about now, as bad as that could be, I completely agree with Byron. He's gone after this year. And by the way, let me be the first, as I've been saying on all the shows, to start the John Gruden is coming back to the Raiders as head coach when McDaniels is fired train.
Oh, wow. Okay. That a one or just a prediction? Not necessarily.
The Gruden Redemption 2 has already started.
Dude.
He's working in New Orleans already.
It's everything that Vegas wants. Don't act like Mark Davis would not love to have him back because he didn't want to get rid of him in the first place.
Yeah.
And McDaniel sucks, by the way. Horrible coach. Just a horrible coach, dude. I thought people would have learned from his time in Denver when he said he was the quarterback magician and tried to turn Tim Tebow into something, which turned into the worst experiment ever. I completely dislike McDaniels as a coach. Offensive coordinator, hey, great all day. Go back to the Patriots.
He's not a leader.
No.
And his Indianapolis flirtation as well is just, that is not a leader of men.
There's just something about him that rubs people up their own way, clearly. Joe, what's your kind of viewpoint? We've been talking through. Joe, give us your viewpoint on the kind of where the Raiders.
Yes, I think people have said most of the things. I think, I'm not a big McDaniels fan as well. And being a 49ers fan, knowing that Jimmy's going there, I do feel a bit sorry for them because he was never a quarterback. Like, even though he won a lot of games, when watching the games, he was never like it was him who actually won the game. It was the system. He was just not losing the game. And I think that's what Jimmy G's level is. I don't think McDaniels is the same level as Shanahan. So he's not going to be able to scheme it up and have the level of talent. I think they've got the offense is still decent. You've still got Devontae Adams, still got Josh Jacobs if they sign. So I think it could still score points. But I think, like you said, the defense, other than like Max Crosby, like you've mentioned, is not looking great. I just think they've had a few years of bad draft picks, and it's just set them up. And this is why they're at this position where they've drafted some defensive players who have gone nowhere, and this is what happens when you just choose badly. When you choose, I think they've chosen a lot of people like, oh, he's got potential to be good, and they just don't hit that potential. And it's just like, no, you should get players in now who are ready to go, who have got a higher floor than some of the players they have picked previously.
I think it's been wasteful and a lot due to kind of off-field issues as well. I mean, how many Raiders first-round picks how many of the last 8 are still on the team? Is it 1?
Oh, geez. I mean, I think in the past, I think the last draft they had players from is when they got Colton Miller and Josh Jacobs. So that was like a few years ago, and they only have 3 players from then. So.
Yeah,
I was going to say that 2019 draft, they had 3 first.
That's the one.
Picks.
Yeah.
They took Cleveland Ferrell number 4.
Oh, God.
And Josh Jacobs was great last year, but as a running back in the first round, you don't really want his first great year to be his last year as his rookie deal. You hope he's going to bang it and he's been solid, but he's not been great. Jonathan Abraham. They got Max Crosby in the 4th round that year.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest draft picks of the last, certainly the Raiders' last 10 years. Hunter Renfrow was a late round pick that year. And it feels like they've done okay in the late rounds. Maybe when Mike Mayock was allowed to pick, but when Gruden was like, "I'm having this guy," it was like, "John, you're not so good at this, bro."
That's exactly right. No, you're exactly right. That's exactly what happened, and that's the problem. As you mentioned, these draft picks over the past, I don't even want to say 10 years, 20 years, to be honest. Like, I mean, go back to Jamarcus Russell, which completely set this franchise back, 10 years, 15 years. So.
Jamarcus pretending to read the playbook.
And a bit of a shout out from the Bottom Line Sports guys as well around kind of, you mentioned Conor Miller there, Omar, that Tyree Wilson maybe the Conor 2.0 on the other side of of Crosby. I think he might be kind of the one shining light that maybe comes out of this season. Before we talk floor and ceiling, Omar, if you've been watching earlier, we have a prop bet that we produce, or I produce, for each of the teams. So for the Raiders, prop bet, it's just a simple yes or no, this one, chaps. Will the Las Vegas Raiders first round pick catch any charges during the 2023 season?
Oh my God, no. What? No.
It's happened too many times before, Omar.
First of all, let us all say here from the Sideline Sports Network, rest in peace to Tina Tinter and her dog that passed away in that horrible, horrible incident. But God forbid, no, hopefully not this year. That being said, I do like the Tyree Wilson pick. I believe the Raiders like to reach, right? So even though he has the value of a top 10 pick, he also has, as you mentioned, a foot injury, which could keep him out for a while. So even though they say he is a little Chandler Jones clone, basically, and that's why they picked him, which he has all the skills. He has all the tools to be a great defensive end. But as you mentioned, right, does that actually play out in the end? Usually for the Raiders, we know how that story goes.
And let's talk
if his next
them.
Chandler Jones, though, he could be catching passes from Jacoby Myers this year.
At least they're on the same team.
That could work. That would be great. That would be creative. Let's go floor and ceiling then for the Raiders. So Joe, we'll start with you, and Omar, we'll let you have the final say on the Raiders. So Joe, start us off with the floor and ceiling for the Las Vegas Raiders for 2023.
We'll say floor. I'll give my 3 wins, 2 or 3 wins. I think that's the floor. If everything goes wrong, McDaniels gets fired around Christmas period. A bit like what happened at Denver. It all just explode. Jimmy plays only a couple of games, and you're having a bit of a nightmare. Ceiling, I can see him sneaking like 8 or 9 wins. Maybe the last few weeks having the fans a bit exciting to see, like, can they sneak into that the playoff wildcard. I don't think they'll get to the playoff wildcard just because of what the strength of the AFC in general. But I think it can still get the fans excited the last few weeks that they might sneak in.
Yeah, Byron, floor and ceiling for the Raiders.
Floor, I think, is. I haven't gone 4-13. I think maybe 2 wins is their absolute floor. The Josh McDaniels thing completely bottoms out. They do have a pretty tough schedule, to be fair. Again, they play the AFC East, they play the NFC North, they play the division, which is a tough one. And the 4 games I have them winning, I was just looking through the predicted. I mean, they could lose all of those. They're not like slam dunk victories. Like, I haven't beaten the Vikings, I haven't beaten Denver once, I haven't beaten the Giants, and I haven't beaten the Patriots. Like, they could lose all those games, certainly. Like, they're not slam dunks. And all the rest of the games I haven't losing, obviously, I think they'll lose. So I think the bottom is 2 wins and battling for the first round pick, which, you take one bad year to get Caleb Williams in, if it's going to be mediocre anyway. I think the upside is I'm bang wrong, and Josh McDaniels is a good coach and a great man manager. And they get 9 wins, maybe 10 somewhere. I'm not sure where they find them, but that's the absolute ceiling, is they sneak a wild card somehow.
Yeah,
Devontae Adams is the best receiver in football again.
Yeah, I think for me, you're gonna, to have any sort of success, you're gonna need to have. I think that Wilson and Crosby are gonna need to fire really well. Which obviously, you know what Crosby is. Wilson could be great, and you need a big season out of Devontae Adams. 3-4 wins for me would be the floor. The ceiling, 8 wins. I think 8 wins would be massively overachieving, and hitting the over on the win total. I think that would be as good as a season as the Las Vegas Raiders could have, sadly, Omar. Omar, for you, you've kind of given us a bit of your view already, but floor and ceiling for the Raiders.
Yeah, gentlemen, I'm not as apocalyptic as Byron, although I do agree with him. All of those games are toss-ups and could easily be losses. So while a team could go 0-16, it's very, very hard for an NFL team to not just stumble into a win during the season. My floor is 4. That's going to be my floor. I'll say 4. I don't think McDaniels is that horrible to where he can't get 4 wins out of this. Again, though, as Byron and Joe both said, it's a very tough division. And then with the schedule that you got, the best thing you can hope is, as Byron said, you sneak out some wins there somewhere in the schedule, or as Joe said, you bring it down the home stretch, which is possible because they do have that week 13 bye. My ceiling is going to be 9 wins, and I think that's pretty much not going to happen. And there's no way in hell, excuse my language, that they're going to make the playoffs.
Cool. We're free and easy here at Good Teams Win Great Teams Cover. Omar, feel free to let your language go loose. Just don't say anything that's going to get us cancelled. That's our line.
Well, you got to watch out for that over here in my country. They cancel you real quick. So
very true. But look, we're going to tread the line carefully. The bottom line, guys, interesting. 2 massive swings from a floor and ceiling. A lot of potential, but Jekyll and Hyde potential. Either be 3 or 14 or 11 and 6.
Whoever's picking 11 and 6, I want what they're drinking. Like they're having a fun Sunday. I want a bowl, a bottle, an injection, whatever it is. Those guys are having a blast on Sunday.
11 wins. If that person can find me more than 7 wins in this schedule, I would be amazed. So yeah, I'm with you. What's he drinking?
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe really the guys at Bottom Line Sports really are taking after Stone Cold Steve Austin.
They got the truck.
A couple of Steve Weisers. Yeah, absolutely. Omar, you stick around. We're going to take a look at the Chargers. If you've got time to stick around, good stuff. Excellent. Let's move on to the LA Chargers. So, look, something I clearly forgot that happened in the Los Angeles Chargers off-season was the appointment of Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator. The Chargers, apart from that, just haven't done a lot. This is a pretty bare slide for the presentation for the so we'll just pop this one up quickly and then we'll take it off because just not a lot happened with the LA Chargers. So last year they went literally nothing. Now they went. Is that come through now? Yeah, good. 10-7. 10-7 and got a wild card place. They blew a 27-point lead in the 31-30 wild card loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars and made their first playoff appearance since 2018. As I mentioned, I said nothing, but Kellen Moore was appointed as offensive coordinator. Joe, you kickstart us off with the Chargers. Where are the Chargers at for you heading into 2023?
I think the Chargers, like the last, 4 or 5 years, it's the same kind of off-season. You think, they're going to be up there challenging with the Chiefs, which I think they can be, but it is just the Chargers. So I think it's going to be a very similar kind of year that they'll lose the games they should be winning. Because when you look at their team, they are solid everywhere. They've got a great offensive line if they all can stay healthy. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I'm not sure about the head coach. I think the Chargers defense haven't done too much the last few years, and he was brought in to try and make that defense one of the top defense in the league. And they've certainly got the players, but for some reason they just always Charger it. So I think it's similar as every year that they could be there with the Chiefs, but for my guess, I think they're going to be scrapping for a playoff place, and we'll see how they manage to trip over and ruin everything as they normally do.
Have the Chargers got to the point where, how we used Spursy in soccer over here for that description of Tottenham Hotspur, how they managed to do things? Are the Chargers at that point, do we think?
I think as soon as that playoff game finished, the Chargers got trademarked. And it just got stamped on their DNA.
Mm-hmm. That game, watching that game, I stayed up and watched that one. I still don't understand I still don't get how they managed to just
in the second half of that game, Travis Etienne had more rush attempts than Austin Eckler. You're 27 points up, 28 points up.
Yeah.
Maybe run the ball.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to sound like a boomer, but
it's a head coach.
Somehow
their last few head coaches are all the same. It feels like they get hired by the Chargers and they say, okay, this is the script for the Chargers. You have to make sure your play, the plays you're going to do no one's going to think you should be doing that way, and you're just going to waste your time out when, and all that kind of stuff.
Brandon Staley's added the analytics to it as well, though. So he's added the analytical decision making, but then can't explain it in press conferences, so he kind of gets trolled a lot. It's why do you do that? It's analytics said so, and he's normally quite right in the analytic thing, but he just doesn't explain it very well. So I don't think that really helps his case, even though I think he's largely correct in his decision making, even if the outcome doesn't work out for him. But he doesn't inspire confidence, I don't think. And I quite liked him coming in because he spoke quite well. And it seems like the longer he's been in the job, the less convincing and well he speaks, which maybe shouldn't be such a big part of the job. But, we're fans. It's all we kind of get to see. We don't get to see him in the building. So.
But then you'd be looking at the decisions like playing Mike Williams when it was like the week 17, like playing all the starters and getting them injured and they already win the playoffs. It's just like them kind of decisions. You're like,
why?
Come on. It's like, and he's way more qualified than any of us and whatnot. But you just sit there and thinking like, even I wouldn't be that stupid. Yeah. Surely you just rest like your main players who have just come back from a back injury, and then it's just like.
And Mike Williams is always injured as well.
Yeah.
Like I love Mike Williams, the player. He's probably one of the best jump ball wide receivers in the NFL. He's a fascinating physical freak, but he's always hurt. Rest him. Like, it's not asking an awful lot, is it?
And injuries have killed this team, the Chargers, for a number of years in terms of big players going down that have really, really kind of hurt them. And, maybe they could have been a much better team as a result. I'm fascinated with Brandon Staley and how he's changed tact on his fourth down approach from going for absolutely everything to then kind of maybe not going for it in moments maybe that he should do. But I'm really interested to see how Kellen Moore works out. So I appreciate I've got a Pittsburgh t-shirt on for the Pittsburgh Pirates. My team is the Dallas Cowboys. Omar, just so you know, joining us for the first time. I'm glad that we have got rid of Kellen Moore. Byron, correct me, but maybe a flat track bully might be the best way to describe Kellen Moore as a coordinator.
Somewhat. I think he had real good ups and he had real mediocre lows. I think he has a bit of I think he's maybe getting too harshly done truthfully by Cowboys fans and Cowboys head coach. Like Mike McCarthy was speaking out about him this week of like, we're finally going to run the offense we want to run. It's like, Kellen Moore didn't own the fucking team. Like, you are the head coach. You could have done whatever you fucking well please. I think he's been a bit scapegoated, truthfully, Kellen Moore. I think he's a huge upgrade in Los Angeles. I'm not necessarily saying Dallas are going to regret getting rid of him because I do kind of see McCarthy like, the offense is here to support the defense, which is great when you've got Dallas's defense. Los Angeles do not have Dallas's defense. On paper, they maybe do. They've got some great pieces, but they're injury prone. I think Justin Herbert this may be a bit outlandish, but 1,400 for MVP, I think Kellen Moore could unleash Justin Herbert, get rid of Lombardi, who slows offenses down and runs, and unless it's a playoff game, and then he just throws nonstop. But I think he's a huge upgrade at offensive coordinator. I think he's going to be more explosive. Added Quentin Johnson, who is probably the best yak receiver in the league. Keenan Allen's one of the best route runners in the league. Mike Williams, one of the best big boy receivers in the league. I love those like complementary skill sets. I like the Chargers a lot, and I think Kellen Moore is an upgrade, and I think he's been slightly harshly remembered by Dallas.
I still hate him.
That's a ludicrous viewpoint.
Herbert is overrated, apparently. Falls short when they need a big play. Omar, what do you think of the Chargers?
Gentlemen, I completely wholeheartedly agree with Joe. It's the same Chargers every year. It's the same script it's literally like Joe said, they hand the coach a script. It's like, hey, you're going to go anywhere from 6-11 to 10-6 or whatever. Now that we have 17 games, 11-6, and you're going to fumble it away in either the last week of the season and or the first week of the wild card playoffs. And it happens every year. And let me be the first to give Brandon Staley a big FU from me because I have Mike Williams on my fantasy team getting ready to, and this dumb, you know what? Let's not rehash old stuff. I don't want to think about that. Anyways.
Remember, we can't get cancelled, Omar.
Right, exactly.
If there's a threat coming at the end of this, we might be in trouble.
Let me back off for a second off of Mr. Staley and his horrible decision-making. Hopefully he's improving. I do agree. His fourth down decision-making has gotten better. I also do think that they have that complete offense that everybody has talked about, right? They got the running back. They got the receivers. Justin Herbert is the next Dan Marino. And I mean that literally. He's not going to win any championships because he's going to be really, really good. And finally, I mean, the defense is good. You got Khalil Mack, right? One of my favorites of all time. Never should have traded him. You got Joey Bosa, but again, they're injury prone, as Byron said. So the Chargers are going to do it again, probably 8-8, and probably fumble it or whatever, 9-8, and fumble it away in the last week or the first game of the playoffs.
We've just, I believe, had our Chargers guest join us. I believe, Rob, is that right? You're our Chargers guest for the show today?
Yes, I am a Charger fan, yes.
Excellent. Well, thanks ever so much for joining us. So we've just been talking through where the Chargers are heading into 2023. Before that, we'll ask you a few views on that. Before that, welcome to the show, and where can we find you, Rob?
Thank you for having me. I am on the Let's Talk Sports Network under a couple of different shows. I do an interview show during the week. I do a show, an NBA show with my son every Sunday night where we talk about the NBA. And my bread and butter, my very first podcast that started me on this network is a podcast called the Nova Nation Podcast, where we talk about Villanova basketball, both men's and women's, the games there. So
cool. Appreciate you coming on, guys. Go check out Rob and his array of content. Where's your head at with how the Chargers are shaping up, Rob, heading into 2023?
Well, when I first came on, I heard you guys talking about Staley. Let me be the first one as a Charger fan to say I am not happy with them retaining Staley. They did what they had to do. They made a move on the offensive coordinator side, bringing in Kellen Moore. Hopefully that maybe stimulates the offense a little bit. I think the offense was too vanilla last year. To me, it looked like Herbert was kind of almost like not even psyched to be playing in underneath that offense. So hopefully Kellen Moore comes in, lets Herbert do more of the things that he probably can do when it comes to his arm and throwing down the field. So I hope they do get a little bit more vertical. But overall, I'm not a fan of Staley whatsoever when it comes.
Oh, we just had Rob drop out.
It wouldn't be like the Chargers to fumble it at the last minute.
Well, let's just see if Rob's audio comes back in. Oh, dear, Byron. There we go.
No!
Rob, you're back. You just dropped out for a second there, Rob.
Sorry.
I think the guys at Bottom Line Sports who are kind of watching along with us today, kind of in agreement with you. Brandon Staley should be on the hot seat. I mean, he's had 2 full seasons now with the Chargers, and I wonder if Kellen Moore potentially a head coach in waiting with the Chargers, that if it doesn't quite work out this year with Staley, they move on from him and Kellen Moore then gets the promotion. That's potentially an option. The Chargers seem to fall in, as we've talked a few times across the episodes and mentioned the 2022 TCU team and that run to the College Football National Championship. As much as I was in love with that team, it appears the Chargers were too, as they took 3 pieces, I believe, from that offense in Quentin Johnson in the first round, Darius Davis, another wide receiver, and then my favorite college football player of last season, Max Duggan. I really hope Max gets on an NFL field at some point, because I just absolutely love that kid. What do you think then of kind of taking the 3 TCU pieces, Rob, in the draft for the Chargers?
Well, definitely it showed that they were looking at improving on the offensive side. Quentin Johnston is definitely a player I think will bring more dynamic to that offense. Hopefully Kellen Moore has a plan to utilize him, because I definitely think with Mike Williams out there, with Keenan Allen out there, both very good big route running receivers. They could use a little bit more speed, which hopefully Quentin can bring to the game, get downfield and create a little bit more of a vertical game for the Chargers. And hopefully, Herbert needs as many weapons as he can, re-signing and bringing back, or not really re-signing, but kind of redeveloping Eckler's contract for this year and getting him back in the fold is another big piece for the Chargers. So hopefully, they're paying attention to what they need to do and who they need to surround their star player, Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and there's again the guys from Bottomline Sports around Herbert potentially having a great year. Byron, you shouted out before, potential MVP candidate. Great year with Kellen Moore because he's a better passer than Dak. Dak's getting pelters as well here, but don't trust Herbert in the big moments. Interesting.
Justin Herbert might be the best, a top 5 pure passer in the NFL. To be fair, I don't think not to pelters at Dak. Justin Herbert is a beautiful passer of the ball.
Yeah.
And he was also injured last year as well. I think that's what people forget. That
he should have missed a couple of weeks and he'd have had a better season.
And the shoulder.
Yeah, he definitely was hurting with those ribs. That was a big issue for him.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're a quarterback. You drop back, you're throwing. That affects almost every single pass that you make. He gutted through it. So hopefully he can, which that's another thing too. We've always talked, about obviously the offensive weapons for the Chargers, but what they did on the offensive line as well, hopefully has really improved and will keep Herbert vertical, because that offensive line, with Zion, with Slater, Pipkins is going to be the run tackle, and then Lindsey, obviously the centerpiece for that offensive line. That should be a better offensive line this year than last year. So let's hope that happens as well, and they keep Herbert, vertical and obviously getting, taking less hits.
Protect him for sure, and possibly, Burrow potentially, but potentially next in line for the huge contract. Do we think that's possibly one of the next ones to get done?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. My biggest gripe with the Chargers have been, I'm a lifelong Charger fan. I've been a Charger fan for over 40 years. My biggest complaint about the Chargers is their management, their ownership being they're tight with money. They don't usually reach into their pockets too deep, and it's caused a lot of issues. The greatest running back that they had in their franchise history, they couldn't come up with spending a little bit more money to keep him as a Charger. So you see a lot of this stuff happens. You obviously saw what happened with them leaving San Diego. They didn't want to put up any money in San Diego for a new stadium, so then they have to go now and rent in LA. So there's a lot of things going on with the ownership when it comes to money. It's another reason why I believe Staley is back this year, because they spent $4 million on him and they don't want to waste that $4 million, because if he had less of a contract, I think he would have been gone last year. But I think because of the money, I think he's back for this year. So with all that being said, now you have this dilemma, and being a Charger fan, to me, I'm a little bit uneasy until I see the ink on that contract from both sides and that everybody's happy. I'm always worried about them not spending enough to keep Herbert in a Charger uniform. Now, I highly doubt it's not going to, that something's going to happen. They're going to sign him, but I just hope that it doesn't become like a drawn out, thing where it weighs on their mind and then it comes into the season and then everybody's talking about it. And then, maybe it gets Herbert a little distracted. So they got to come up, give them a good offer, get him signed, and let's move forward.
I think they're kind of lucky in the sense of the two huge QB contracts coming up is Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. And they're both stingy owners. So, it's not like Joe Burrow is going to sign a new deal and be like, oh, well, what the heck is happening with Justin Herbert? I think they're both going to historically probably drag it out longer than they should.
Yeah.
And I think, gentlemen, the thing about that is, going back to the point that you made, Paul, is that Kellen Moore was not the offensive coordinator that the Cowboys needed. He's just not their style of offensive coordinator. But for the Chargers, he fits perfectly like a glove. And I believe that is going to contribute to, as Byron said, a possible MVP candidate season for Herbert, even if they do go 9-8.
And if that does come to fruition, you then may get, as the Bottomline Sports guys have just maybe shared with us, Quentin Johnson in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's plus 2,000 at the minute. 20-1 in
20 to
UK
1,
money, plus 2,000. Which is interesting given kind of the array of offensive talent that we've got, from ranging from B. John Robinson to the quarterbacks and so on. We'll do floor and ceiling for the Chargers. Rob, will save you till last if that's okay, as the Chargers man. So Omar, floor and ceiling for the Chargers in 2023.
Yeah, floor. I mean, again, I think the Chargers are a good enough team consistently to where they're, always going to have a pretty decent record, even if they're not having a bad year. So I'm going to say their floor is 6 wins, I would say, at the least. And I would say for their ceiling, I'm going to give them, I'm vacillating between 12 and 13. It's a tough division. I'm going to go 12 wins. No, you know what? I'm going bold. I'm going 13 and with Byron's MVP, Justin Herbert.
Interesting. Byron, you've got a fan. You'll be driving those odds in Vegas down.
I should have bet before I said a word.
Byron then hit us with, we know Justin Herbert's going to be your MVP or an MVP candidate, maybe. He didn't quite go as far as backing him, but what's the floor and ceiling for the Chargers?
I think the floor is 8 and 9, 9 and 8. Ceiling, I have them project. I always too high on the Chargers. I like the Chargers a lot, even though they always let me down. I have them at 14 and 3, which is probably a little bold. I had them winning that week. I had them winning that week 18 matchup. Yeah, I think their offense is so good.
Who's the one drinking now?
I'm on real strong Kool-Aid today. All on that Brandon Staley shit. If everyone stays healthy, the defense has got so much talent. If Derwin James ever has a full season, he's a defensive player of the year candidate. Khalil Mack and Bosa on the bookends. Eric Kendricks is a great addition at linebacker. It was really their weakness last year. And no Lombardi. Yes, Kellen Moore. And I like to start the season. If they can beat Miami in week 1, which is one of my favorite games of the season, I love both teams. They can start 4-0 before the bye. I hate having week 5 bye because the Chargers are going to get injured down the stretch, because they do. But everyone's fit today, so that's how I'm projecting the season, is everyone's fit. I think they can start at 4-0 going into the bye. They have a nice soft schedule going into the bye, certainly, and then we'll see from there. But yeah, I have them 14 and 3. And just one little nugget, not related to their floor or ceiling, just a fascinating fun fact that I find: Gerald Everett, their tight end, has played 6 years in the NFL. In every single season, he has increased his targets, his receptions, and his yards every year. Not really related, but I think it's a fun fact.
Booking for fantasy. Good shout. Your 14 and 3 take was just no way from the guys about Live Sports. And
the guys predicted 11 and 6 for the Raiders. I will take their laughter.
That's true. Yeah, fair enough. I think I kind of get wrapped up in that thing with the Byron as well, with the Chargers. And do you know what it is? I think it's the baby blue.
Yeah, jerseys. Powder blue. Beautiful.
Powder blue. Sorry, the powder blue jerseys. I think it's just what does it for me, despite the fact it makes them look like Manchester City. However,
they're treble wins.
All right.
That's a winning colour nowadays.
We can do a whole episode about that, Byron. We'll do a United 99 versus City 23 treble winners. We'll do that episode soon. Joe, floor or ceiling, Los Angeles Chargers.
So yeah, when Omar was talking, then he basically took my predictions as well. So I think like floor 6 or 7. I think it's like Byron was saying, like if the injuries, if that like hits like it does normally most years, then it could be a 6 or 7 year. And I think ceiling probably like 12 or 13, and you never know, they might hit like the 25% Chargers fan being at home games as well. I think that could be a good ceiling.
Well, we've got my prop bets for the Chargers related to that, so let's save that. Rob might never want to come on again after I reveal our Chargers prop bet, but Rob, floor and ceiling then for your Los Angeles Chargers.
Well, I would have to say this, the AFC West, we were talking about it the start of last year, how this was going to be such a great division, probably one of the best divisions in football. I was very high on all the teams in the West. Denver's going to be improved this year with Sean Payton. I think he's going to get them, to play better. Obviously, you have the Chiefs in the division. That's always tough to have to play them twice. The Raiders, we won't really worry about the Raiders too much. So I would say the ceiling would probably be 8 wins for the ceiling for the Chargers. And as far as as the floor, my bad, that was really bad. And then the ceiling would probably be about 13 wins for them. And the biggest if for the Chargers every single year is their health. And it always seems to be an issue. If the key big name players can stay on the field and play 16, 17 games for the season, then you're looking at a team that could, obviously make the playoffs and do some damage in the playoffs if they're healthy. And that's always a huge if when it comes to the Chargers. I can't say it enough, man. We always have such high hopes, and then something always seems to happen. So, hopefully we'll get through one good year.
You see, I think it'll make such a big difference if they can not have kind of the excessive injury issues that they have. Probably similar for me, the floor for the Chargers probably 8 and 9, so it's hovering somewhere around 500, and a ceiling wildcard. You're getting a wild card spot and probably losing on the road to a division winner is kind of where I see the Chargers at. So pretty much exactly the same as last season with where we're at. Omar, I guess some of your guys from the Balls and Buds Sports and Entertainment Podcast have joined us and are watching the last part of the show. Rob, if you've got time to stick around, we're just going to finish off our episode for the last few minutes by taking a look at some of the futures markets. We're going to look at the division. We're going to look at the getting in the playoffs and win totals to see what tickles our fancy heading into 2023. So let me get that ready. And yeah, unsurprisingly, the Chiefs are overwhelming favourites to make it 8 straight AFC West titles in a row at -160. Anyway, the Chiefs don't win the division.
I mean, if the Chargers win 14 games, it might be in play.
That's
but
the
it
only
feels like
way.
I'm in the minority.
Yeah, that's the only way. And Byron, that's not happening.
Well, I still have the Chiefs winning the division in that scenario. I have the Chiefs at 15-2, so even I don't have them, and I haven't winning 14 games. So,
if you've got the Chiefs winning 15 and the Chargers winning 14, what AFC division is the trash division this year? The South?
The AFC South, yeah.
Your predictions, Because someone has to be with that many wins for 2 teams in one division.
I have one winning team in the AFC South, and yeah.
Interesting. Well, we'll take a look at the AFC South. It's coming up soon in our State of the Division series. Guys, anything else from the... I like the Chargers. I don't think they're good value at like 3-1 to win the division. It just feels like it just doesn't feel enough to pique my interest to take an out.
I have them at 14-3, and I still don't have them winning the division. So if you make it 6-1, maybe. But the Broncos aren't touchable at +550. And I did mention earlier, Rob wasn't here. I don't know why he needs to hear my take, but the Raiders are the same odds to win the division as to have the first overall pick next year. So I know which one I would rather bet on. The Raiders are trash, and +1200, you should put it on have the worst record in the NFL not to win this division, because they are not winning this division.
Yeah, and I'm not sure too much about how sports betting odds work, but if it were me, I'd throw all of my money on the -500 for the Raiders not making the playoffs, and just take maybe whatever 50 cents you get back off of that, because I know that's probably a low exchange rate.
Yeah,
it is pretty short, but yeah.
The only problem is, your money's got to be vested all that time.
Yeah. To see it, it's a low interest rate savings account is what that is basically.
Yeah.
Joe, anything screaming at you from the odds for the playoffs and the AFC West winners?
Not really. There's nothing there to draw you in, really. I think everyone expects the Chiefs to win it. And I was curious to see what the charges of not making the playoffs would be, just because I was just thinking about how the AFC East have got 4 teams which could make it. AFC North, all of them could make the playoffs. Don't know who's going to win that and who's going to be close to the playoffs. So I think it's going to be a lot tighter for them, for how many teams there are to get that wild card. But at them odds, probably you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean the bookies in Vegas seem to I say Vegas, thanks to Bet365 for providing the odds. Get in touch for a sponsorship deal. -150. They're just kind of so. I think that's where the Chargers are just going to be on that line of.
Yeah.
did they get a wild card or not? I think they're going to be close, and with a bunch of those teams that kind of will go to kind of week 18 or within a chance, we might see 3 or 4 AFC teams battling it out for that final wild card spot, and that's where I kind of see where the Chargers are and if they can do enough to get in or not. Probably the more interesting part to have a look at for the AFC West is the win totals. So we've got Kansas City Chiefs 11.5 wins, Chargers 9.5 wins, Broncos 8.5 wins, which I think is quite high, and the Raiders 7.5 wins. Omar, you've already shouted out and told us you're going to be taking the under on the Raiders. Don't see them winning 8 games.
This is very easy for me, gentlemen. Over, under. Kansas City and San Diego are both going to be better than that. There's no way in hell the Broncos or the Raiders reach either of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm siding with you. I love the Chiefs to win 12 games. I think something would have to go pretty disastrously wrong for the Chiefs not to win 12 games. Rob, anything you sort of seeing there on the win totals? Where do you think your Chargers are going to sit, over under 9.5?
Yeah, I think they're going to go over the 9.5. But I mean, if I were to take a chance on a bet, I would maybe go with that Broncos plus 100.
So win 9+ games, yeah?
Yep.
Interesting. We talked to Broncos earlier, and some mix. We had Dan from the Answer is 42, who was on earlier, sort of really optimistic about how the Broncos were going to be. The rest of our panel here at Good Teams and Great Teams Cover didn't quite share that optimism, did they, Byron?
Very much not.
Very much not. Yeah, I'm interested.
You said if you were going to take a chance.
Yeah, it is.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to happen, but as far as the way the odds are looking, I would maybe put, I really wouldn't, with the Chiefs and the Chargers, is really not, those odds really aren't going to get me betting, but maybe plus 100. If it goes up a little bit higher, I would maybe take a chance with that.
Hold on, gentlemen. I've got a very interesting question for Rob. So, Rob, would you take the plus 100 for your Broncos, or for the Broncos to go over, or the plus 100 for your Chargers to go under?
I don't see. I mean, if you're going to take a chance, I mean, it's maybe not a bad idea. I mean, 9.5 is just the Chargers are just so vanilla right now. I think that's why these numbers are the way they are for them. So it is kind of tough to get behind a bet with them. But I would say I would probably go Chargers under 9.5 with the plus 100.
Yeah, I think they're right on that line of 9 and 10 wins, the Chargers. I think that's the perfect line. I think they've got that kind of just right. I think you're going to see the Chargers be 9 or 8, 10 and 10 and 10 or 10 and 7. You can't be both, obviously. So I think the line's right there. So, gents, we're going to wrap up Good Teams and Great Teams Cover. What we didn't do is our Chargers prop bet. So, Rob, just in case you hadn't seen it before, we've got a bit of a prop bet that I have created for each of the teams. So, and this is related to the fans of the Los Angeles Chargers, specifically in LA. How many people in Los Angeles will actually care about the Chargers during the 2023 season? Over or under 9.5 people?
Are you including employees?
No, I can't include employees, yeah.
Okay. Under, yeah. Rob,
where are you? I know you mentioned, obviously, are you in Philly? You mentioned because you do some of the Villanova stuff. Are you in Philly or?
Yeah, I'm actually in New Jersey. So I'm an East Coast Charger fan. And the worst move the Chargers could have made was going to LA. I mean, they couldn't really draw in San Diego either, but that had a lot to do with where the stadium was. Jack Murphy was always the outskirts of the town, where they put Petco Park for the Padres is right in the middle of the city. And that would have been such a good draw to have a stadium in downtown San Diego. Don't know why, just so many reasons why it just didn't ever happen. But going to LA, it's just horrible. It's just so bad to turn on a Charger game and just see so many either empty seats or see so many of the other teams' jerseys and colors and everything when you're trying to watch a Charger home game. It's just pathetic.
The guys at the Bottom Line Sports tropped in to say, I think, to be honest, or to be honey, we're on friendly terms now. To be honest, I'm surprised I found a Charger fan to come on the show. We did. We managed to get Rob.
You just have to go to the East Coast to do so.
Yeah, East Coast.
I just have to say, gentlemen, the Chargers leaving San Diego is the biggest NFL crime in the past 20 years. It's ridiculous that they took that franchise away from that dedicated fan base that they had in San Diego.
Well, I don't think St. Louis were too delighted either with their move. I mean, Paul and Joe, like UK, it's we had one. Milton Keynes took the Wimbledon team, and the fact it happens like relatively frequently kind of blows my mind. It's so, I don't want to say inhumane, but like sport is such a big part of communities. It almost is. It makes my stomach churn. Like, the what was the term for it? The midnight move from Indianapolis from Baltimore to Indianapolis. It's like, man, these people care so much about their teams and their communities. It's so important, and it just doesn't matter. It's awful. And I love the chat. The powder blue, LT, Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates. There was such a fun team. They had such a fun energy, and I couldn't agree more. It stinks.
We see that. I feel really, really, really sorry I know we've talked Raiders here, for the people of Oakland who've just had all of their teams ripped away from them. The A's are the last show in town, and they're about to move in the not too distant future.
And the only reason I don't say anything about them, Paul, is because that was the city's fault. Like the city could have done more to keep both of those teams. So while I'm upset because I grew up a Raiders fan, I don't live in Oakland, but also Oakland could have done a lot more to keep both of those teams. So I feel a little worse for San Diego, in my opinion.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you all coming on. Good Teams Win Great Teams cover. We'll wrap it up there. This has been our State of the AFC West. Our State of the Division series will continue. We'll move over to look at the NFC North in our next episode of the State of the Division series. Rob, thanks ever so much for coming on, giving us your thoughts and your Chargers perspective. Omar, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully, guys, you'll want to come back in the future because it's been great to have and talk ball with you. Also, thanks Dan as well for his Broncos insight earlier on. Joe, Byron, I think I'm going to do it now. I'm going to take away the recurring guest tags, and I'm just going to say co-hosts Byron and Joe.
Right, so it's an honor, Paul. Yeah.
Absolutely appreciate it.
Hardy indeed,
Absolutely. Follow along if you've been watching us. Go follow the Twitter page, Instagram page, YouTube channel, all at GTW_GTC. And for the audio version of the podcast, go check us out on Spotify. Good Teams Win, Great Teams cover. Thanks very much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.